G'day everyone, Daniel again here from Caravan Industry Victoria, and I've got Linda Hitch here from Hitch Engineering, and Linda's been working with a lot with our members and industry, both the manufacturers, dealerships, and also the consumers in the space of compliance and understanding, what you should and shouldn't do. And probably a key topic for you, Linda, is upgrading your caravan and the weights in particular. So yeah, very interesting topic, and it's a very common one these days.
Well, with COVID at the moment, a lot of people are at home rethinking how they're going to use their caravans, and I've been inundated with calls for upgrades. What I've typically found is that people absolutely love the caravans they have. They love how it tows, they're familiar with it, they know how it packs, and therefore they want to keep it. And sometimes lifestyles change. Many of the times they want to add extra water tanks or solar panels to do free camping. Others just want to be able to take it for a longer period of time. Others want to be able to add electric scooters because their push bikes are no longer suited to their lifestyle, let's say. And so I typically get approached to increase, roughly it's about between 100 to about 300 kilos of extra payload. And I think our industry is quite fortunate in that the manufacturers do give you a bit of room. When they do their design, they do allow a little bit. So I said this is why the vehicle compliance plate is so important in upgrades, is because I rely on a lot of that data to work out what their suspension is capable of. So quite often you'll find on the VIN plates, it will show a maximum load capacity. And that essentially means how much weight the suspension has been designed for. And that is the maximum. And so what I do is I base a lot of my calculations on that. Obviously, I also analyze the chassis, and I'll do a couple of engineering calculations to make sure that it's still within a very safe margin.
Yep.
And then proceeding with that, I will go ahead and issue a secondary plate that gets attached either below, beside the existing vehicle compliance plate. In addition, what that means is that once I have approved that and I've sanctioned that it still meets requirement within the design scope of the caravan and the suspension and the chassis, it then needs to be updated. So VicRoads has obviously a database that has all the weights. So at the moment, your current ATM is what VicRoads knows. So even though I've updated it on the plate, legally your registration will also need to reflect that the ATM has now changed, and when that was changed. So what I typically do is provide the client with a certificate of compliance that says that this vehicle still adheres to VSB1 at the new ATM loads, and I also recalculate what the tow ball will be, what the payload will be, so it's very clear to them as well. And then also I send them off with a change of vehicle detail form. Yep. Which is, and I'll just ask you to bring that up so that people are familiar with this, because like I said, during COVID, a lot more people are wanting to upgrade. So this is what VicRoads want. At the moment, there is no charge to upgrade, to do the documentation upgrade behind this. So the registration number, your license number, obviously, so they can link it, then all your details. Then vehicle make is in that first section that's blanked, and then the vehicle type. So for that, obviously, if it's a Jayco or whatever Viscount, you put that in, what the vehicle type is. In this case, it would be a caravan. And then a brief description is ATM upgrade. And then over to the right-hand side of the column, you'll find ATM. That gets populated along with the VIN number. This is not a VAS. In the past, VAS certification was required for an ATM upgrade. However, it's not. I'm not sure if that's going to change in future with the new Motor Vehicle Act. It might, I'm not too sure, but we're watching that space. So anyway, with this, along with the change of vehicle details, the certificate of compliance, you will also need to take your vehicle to the nearest Vic Roads branch, because they do need to cite the new plate that's in there. And with that, then you're off. I also recommend that the owners notify their insurance company as well, just to let them know that sometimes they forget that. So it's worth mentioning that now.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's probably a couple of aspects to it. There's two people that can upgrade it. Linda, there's the original manufacturer that can do it based on the vehicle. Now, the issue that original manufacturers have got, unless they cite the vehicle, they don't know what other upgrades are being done. So a lot of them will probably won't do it. And that's why you're better off with the likes of yourself going through a certified engineer that can then do the upgrades for you, check the product out, check that it's right, and then you sort of go through the process. Because you talked about, you know, people falling in love with their caravans, and then, you know, their lifestyle changes, as we all know. And you mentioned it now that with COVID, and as we film this on Zoom and pretend that we're actually in the show when we're just got a virtual background here and we're playing around in here. People are looking at things and wanting to do different things now. So it really changed your mindset. And, you know, with our caravan and RV safety inspections that we've been doing, we note that, you know, someone might have bought a caravan off a friend, or they've gone to a dealership, bought a used caravan and stuff like that. They actually don't know what the weights are, and their lifestyle is different to others, and they need more capacity. So, you know, in a few of the other segments that we've done, there's some more information on, you know, the ratings and compliance plates and all that sort of stuff and all that. But this one's particular about the process, about upgrading your product, and you're upgrading it to make sure you suit your needs, because everyone's different, and then it's got to make sure it matches to your car and all that. And some people might have had a car that had less towing capacity, and, you know, the van that you've bought from that person, you've got a bigger car towing capacity, and you want to upgrade your van. So it's the right process to make sure it goes through someone like yourself, because there's so many areas that require weight that you've got to make sure you're doing the right things. So it's definitely a big topic of conversation now.
Probably worth mentioning, Daniel, even just to have a discussion with the manufacturer, if you are putting in an order for a caravan, by all means ask. If you think that the long-term use will cover other extensions, let's say your family's growing, is it adaptable to that? Think about, if it is possible to get the ATM increase at the point of manufacture, that's also worth asking.
Yeah, and it's a good one, and we're going to be controversial here, Linda, and I think we just do it anyway, right? We talked about this last week. What's interesting with what you just said is, and thinking about what you want to do for the future is, your ATM of your caravan might be 3 ton and your car can only take 2.5. But it'll be sitting in a dealership that you bought it off the yard. Now, it doesn't mean you can't have it, because your ATM's a rating. It's actually not the weight at that moment in time. So you got to make sure it matches your lifestyle and then what you're going to do. And if that's the case, then, if you can have 100 kilo payload and it's safe and it's fit for purpose, all those key aspects, we've got that. It doesn't mean that you can't take it if you've got that capacity to do it. So
the weights are at that point in time when you are towing the weights that are acting from the wheel on the road.
Correct.
What is plated is a maximum from a design perspective.
Correct.
So unless you load it to your maximum, that's when that is obviously your peak or your limit. But generally, if you're towing the trailer empty, well, it's not going to be at 3 ton. It'll be at your tear mass.
Exactly. Exactly. So thought it'd be controversial, but why not? We're going to have some fun with it. So we're going to talk about weights and how it'll work.
That's what we do.
Yeah. But I think it's also clearing up and understanding how it all works, because the ATM and GTM and maximum ratings, as you said, they're not at the actual weights, and people forget that. It's a rating, and regulators forget that too. So I've had many people ring me and say, "Oh, I got pulled over," or "I got a friend that got pulled over by the cops and said that I can't tow this," and all that. And in most of the times, that's actually not fully correct, because they might not understand it as well. And collectively across industry, regulators and industry and manufacturers and all that, we're all trying to work together to get to that end result. And, you know, it's probably not a heap of clarity, but we are getting there. And, you know, particularly around the educational pieces, and that's why we're doing these, to debug some of those myths and, you know, get them right.
And I think just the growth with the industry and everyone loving to caravan in Australia. Why wouldn't you? There's no need to go overseas, and especially in light of the pandemic, people are wanting to support local business, and with the bushfires and so on. So I think even regulators are going to become far more well versed in what the definitions are.
Yeah, and that's why you know, I know a few industry associations now are doing caravan and RV safety inspections in their states to help consumers, but they're working with their regulators to educate them as well. So it's a collective effort to get along. You know, I know Vic Roads are working with us. We've got a project at the moment. We're weighing caravans, you know, new, used, at dealerships of customer vans, all that sort of stuff. It's really designed to get the best result and work through these, because as we sort of talked about a couple of other topics, it's not that easy to understand, and there are a lot of regulations and then how it applies, because it covers broadly multiple products. So, you know, we probably deviated from upgrading a caravan, but we think it's pretty important about how it all ties in together.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's all about education. I completely agree. The more you know, the more you understand, and you know what your limits are.
Yeah, correct. So, you know, in terms of upgrading your products, I think, you know, the best advice that we've got is you go to someone like Linda, who's got, you know, the knowledge of you know, does the research and evidence to make sure it's right, because you want to make sure you get the right result for yourself at the same time. And the key aspect, I was
just going to add, Daniel, where you've got situations where, let's say, the suspension is definitely not capable of the upgrade, there are absolute options with changing out the suspension, and there are many caravan repair places that are able to strengthen your chassis and swap out, let's say, the suspension to something that is that does have a greater capacity. Again, we still need to check the drawbar, make sure that that's within the limits.
Correct.
And when you do the upgrade, what also happens is generally they put a subframe underneath the chassis, and it will lift, say, between 50 or 100 mil, depending. Then it means all your lights are going to be lifted as well.
Exactly.
Your coupling is now going to be lifted as well somewhat. So there's a lot of other things that need to be balanced, and sometimes the cost of that outweighs, and some people will choose to sell their caravan and buy a second-hand one that has a greater capacity.
Yeah.
It just depends, where does that caravan sit in terms of compliance, and how will the upgrade affect it?
Yeah, correct. All right. I think probably the last thing that I probably had is, the key bit is you got to keep your original plate on your van, because it's your original source of evidence, and then you attach a new one with the new weights, and then you got to make sure your registration. And I think a great other point you mentioned was your insurance as well, to understand and make sure that they know what's going on, because you wouldn't want something to go wrong and not to be, you know, what's the saying, cross the T and dot the I, because it could come back to haunt you. So you're just going to make sure you do the right process, and you know, make sure you're going through the right people is probably the critical bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so we'll wrap that one up there. Obviously, we sort of talked about a few other topics which we're talking about as well. So have a look at those and how it all ties in together. So thanks for listening in.
Thank you.